Good morning. I am Dr. T. Jayakodi, Assistant Professor, PG and Research Department of Commerce, Arulmigu Palaniyandavar Arts College for Women, Palani. Today we are going to discuss about very interesting topic, shares, kinds of shares and different types of share capital. What do you mean by shares? Every business will have its own capital. Like this, a company will have its own capital. The share capital of a company is divided into units of small denomination. Each unit of such small denomination is called a share. For example, the capital of a company is rupees 4 lakh divided into 4,000 parts, each part of rupees 100. The face value is rupees 100. Then each will be known as shares. What do you mean by share capital? Share means the portion in the share capital of the company, which is the definition of under the Companies Act 2013. Share capital constitute the basis of the capital structure of a company. Next, we see that kinds of shares. Under the Companies Act 2013, a company have two classes of shares. They are preference shares, equity shares. What do you mean by equity shares? According to section 43 of the Companies Act 2013, all shares of a company which are not preference shares are equity or ordinary shares. Equity shares constitute the major portion of the shares of the company having share capital. Equity shares are those which have no special rights in respect of annual dividends and return of capital after the company goes into liquidation. The rate of dividend on such shares is not fixed. Equity shareholders have the right to vote to manage. Hence, they are the real owners of the company. Next, preference shares. As the name suggests that these shares have some preferences as compared to other types of shares. These shares are given two types of preferences: payment of a dividend, repayment of capital at the time of liquidation. That is, a preference share is one which enjoys certain preferential rights. First on, preference shares have a fixed dividend. The second one is preference shareholders enjoyed by the return of capital in the event of winding up of the company. Preference shareholders are paid back their capital before any other classes of shareholders. Classes of preference shares. The following are the different classes of preference shares: cumulative preference shares, non-cumulative preference shares, participating preference shares, non-participating preference shares, convertible preference shares, non-convertible preference shares, redeemable preference shares and irredeemable preference shares. So what do you mean by cumulative preference shares? The preference shareholders are paid dividend at a fixed rate. But when dividends go on accumulating, in case the dividend is not paid, preference shares are said to be cumulative. What do you mean by non-cumulative preference shares? Shares in respect of which dividends do not accumulate are called non-cumulative preference shares. If the company does not declare dividend in any year, The non-cumulative preference shareholders' rights to dividend in respect of that year is lost forever. Next one is participating preference shares. The articles of association may contain a provision to the effect that after dividend has been paid on the equity shares at a specified rate, the holders of preference shares will have a right to participate in the remaining profits in addition to the ordinary preference dividend. Such shares are called participating preference shares. What do you mean by non-participating preference shares? Non-participating preference shares are those shares which do not carry the right of sharing profits left after paying equity and preference dividend at a specified rates. Next one is redeemable preference shares. Redeemable preference shares are those which carry the right to be redeemed during the lifetime of the company. What do you mean by irredeemable preference shares? It do not carry the arrangement for the redemption. Shares only repayable at the timing of winding up of the company. Next one is convertible preference shares. Convertible preference shares are those shares which can be converted into equity shares or debentures of the company after a stipulated period of time. What do you mean by non-convertible preference shares? Non-convertible preference shares are those shares which cannot be converted into equity shares or debentures of the company. Next, we see the different components of the share capital. The following are the different types of share capital: authorized capital, issued share capital, subscribed share capital, called up share capital, paid up share capital and reserve capital. First one is authorized share capital. Authorized share capital is the amount of share capital which is authorized in the memorandum of association of the company. It is also known as nominal capital or registered capital. The amount of capital is registered with the registrar of companies. Hence, it is also known as registered share capital. It is the amount of capital specified in the capital class of the memorandum of association. It is the maximum amount up to which a company is authorized to issue shares to the public. The next one is issued share capital. Issued share capital means the amount of share capital issued to the public through prospectus. The issued share capital may be equal to or less than the authorized capital of the company. Generally, the issued share capital must be at least 50% of the authorized capital of the company. Next one is subscribed capital. Subscribed share capital means the amount of share capital subscribed by the public out of the issue of share capital. It is in the consideration in the form of cash or kind. It is a part of issued capital which is not subscribed by the public is called unsubscribed capital. Next one is called up capital. Generally, the share capital of a company may be collected in different installments, that is called as the application money, allotment money and call money. The amount of share capital demanded by the company from shareholders, it is known as called up capital. Next one is paid up capital. Paid up share capital is the amount of capital which is paid by the shareholders of the company. Generally, the amount of paid up capital must be equal to the amount of called up capital. Therefore, paid up share capital will be less than that of the called up money. So, paid up share capital equal to called up money minus calls in arrears. Next one is reserve capital. The reserve capital is the portion of authorized capital which is reserved for certain purposes. It is a portion of the subscribed capital not already called up become to the reserve capital. You have to pass the special resolution for creating the reserve capital. It should be need not be shown in the balance sheet of the company. Thank you. I hope that from this video you have to understand the basics of share capital and the different types of share capital. Thank you.